This is the JAC T9, unless you're watching this from Germany, in which case it's probably called the JAC, which is probably not the descriptor the brand is going for. Anyway, it is the latest value-packed Chinese ute to arrive in Australia, and refreshingly, this time the brand says it isn't trying to be the toughest or the towingest ute in the country. It's not trying to take down the Ford Ranger Raptor or even a top-spec Toyota HiLux. Instead, it's aiming for the middle ground, hoping to do just enough of everything and for a cheaper price than its rivals to keep most people happy. So, does it live up to that promise? Let's go find out. There aren't 11 billion options in the JAC family, with the T9 arriving in just two grades, this top-spec Haven and the entry-level Oasis. Both are dual-cab 4x4s and both are sharply priced, with the Oasis kicking things off at $46,329 drive away in New South Wales, and our Haven at $49,390 drive away. That you can put either of the T9 models on the road at less than 50k is pretty good, right? That puts both well under something like a Ranger XL 4x4 or a Mitsubishi Triton GLS 4x4. The equipment list is strong too. There are 18-inch alloys, LED headlights and DRLs, auto mirrors with puddle lights, and you get the side steps, the sport bar and the sprayed tub liner included too. Inside there's leather trim, a 10.4-inch central screen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a 7-inch digital dash, heated front seats and some clever power sources, including a household style plug in the back row. You also get a whole heap of the actual ute stuff and a SAC safety list, but we'll come back to both of those in just a second. Okay, so it's fair to say that the JAC T9 doesn't really change the ute game in terms of design, but I reckon it looks pretty sharp. I do love this hugely domed bonnet, the blacked out grille and the seemingly ubiquitous big brand lettering on the front. All kind of scream tough truck, don't they? Even if under the touch it can feel a bit plasticky. That said, the roof rails, the side steps and the sport bar all help it kind of look the part too. Step into the T9 Haven and you'll find a relatively upmarket space with some of these cheaper, harder materials, at least joined by things like this nice quilted leather on the door panels and on the seats, which are heated up front. And even the touchpads on the dash are nice and soft as well. Now, I do like the look of this big central screen, but when you turn it on, it's almost like the graphics have been transported here from the mid-1990s, and it is a bit fiddly and clunky to use. And I'm not in love with the position of the wireless charge pad either. The phone's not all that secure and it does tend to sort of rattle around while you're driving. So more and more of these dual cab utes are being used as lifestyle vehicles, which means the back seat is suddenly very important. So I'm sitting behind roughly my own driving position and I've got enough knee room and enough headroom, but it does feel a little dark and claustrophobic back here, namely because of the black roof and all the black color in the doors and the seats. Now, elsewhere you do get twin USB charge points, your own vents, but no temperature controls. And I do love the fact that you get a standard kind of household plug here, so you can charge bigger devices like your laptop or whatever. Between the two seats is a pull down divider that houses two cup holders, and there are big bottle holders in each of the doors as well. Now, a couple of tiny quirks. These seatbelt clasps are hidden in this weird kind of hole that even when you pull them out, they kind of drop back in. There's this kind of cavernous space next to you. I'm sure there's some reason for it, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. And I had my baby seat in here yesterday positioned on this side, but you'll find that the top tether is here in the middle. So it's a bit awkward trying to link it all together. Remember when I said the T9 wasn't trying to compete with Australia's dual cab big guns? Well, that mostly occurs in the workhorse stuff. So for example, the T9 can tow 3 tons rather than the industry standard 3.5, but its payload is 1,045 kilograms. Plus the brand says you can fit an Aussie pallet in its tray. Now, speaking of which, to get access to that, you pull down this very heavy hinge door and you'll find a fairly big space, around 1.5 meters by 1.6 meters roughly. And there's 4 tie down points to keep your cargo secure. Now, while we're back here, there's a solid rear axle with leaf springs and a rear diff lock too, and the ground clearance is listed at 210 millimeters, while the wading depth is 650 millimeters. And if you are heading off-road, I'm going to pop those important numbers on screen here for you too. The JAC T9 is powered by a 2-litre turbo diesel, producing 120 kilowatts and 410 newton meters. Now, that power is fed through an 8-speed automatic and sent to the tyres via either 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive high, or 4-wheel drive low. And if you're thinking those numbers don't sound overly exciting, well, you're right. The turbocharger does help get things moving eventually, but when you first plant your foot, not much of anything happens. And we haven't towed or carried anything yet. Now, JAC is claiming 7.6 litres per 100 kilometres, but our numbers have been more like 10 litres. Anyway, there's a 76 litre fuel tank on board, which means at today's money, you're looking at more than 150 bucks to fill it up. And using JAC's numbers, that should carry you around 1,000 Ks. Okay, welcome to the driver's seat of the JAC T9. I'm going to start with obviously a pretty important caveat. This has been a largely urban and freeway test. We haven't really taken it off-road or done any of the really tough stuff. This is really treating it as a lifestyle vehicle. So first things first, I have found it actually really easy to live with and relatively car-like in the way it goes about its business. Yes, there is that kind of jostly, bouncy suspension, which is so common of an unladen ute, but otherwise it's fairly easy to drive, easy to steer, and easy to park, even in the city, helped by the fact that this one has an overhead camera so you can always see the dimensions of the vehicle when you're trying to park. But the one area I think a ute like this does fall down as a lifestyle vehicle is actually storage. For such a big car, there actually isn't that much usable storage in it. And by that I mean yesterday, for example, we were driving over to see my parents on the other side of Sydney, and we had our young son with us. So we had the baby seat set up in the back. That was easy enough. But then it came time to load the pram. Of course, the only place available was the tray at the back, and we could use the tie down points to secure it. That's not a problem, but it was baking down sun on it, making the pram about 1 billion degrees by the time we got there. And then on the way back, of course, it started to rain, making the pram wet on the way back. So if you want to use the tray as storage, you really do need some sort of cover to make that work. So the good parts of the drive experience are actually pretty self-explanatory. It feels pretty easy to live with. It doesn't feel overly truck-like in the way that it goes about its business, except for that ride that we mentioned earlier. And the gearbox is fantastic, really smooth shifting. And even the diesel, while it does get a little noisy underfoot, is fairly refined in the way it goes about its business as well. Now, the downsides, well, I do feel like the turbocharger in this car is doing a whole lot of heavy lifting. So if I come to a complete stop here and put my foot flat to the floor in 3, 2, 1, you'll find not much of anything happens for a while, and then the turbo kicks in and you lunge forward. Can be a bit disconcerting if you're trying to break out into fast moving traffic. And that of course means it's not overly fast either, and that's without anything in the tray or towing anything behind it. Now, the other thing I find absolutely mind-boggling about any number of new cars at the moment are the safety systems. The two in this one that particularly get my goat in this car are the overspeed warning, which will tell you if, let's say, you're going through a school zone at 50 kilometers an hour instead of 40 kilometers an hour, an alarm will sound to let you know that you're speeding, all of which makes sense until you realize that it doesn't know what time it is. So if you're going through a school zone at 2 o'clock in the morning, it will still bing and bong at you, which is annoying. You can switch it off, but you have to do so every single time you get into the car. The other one that's killing me at the moment is the driver attention monitor, fed through this camera over here. There you go. So as I tapped it, it told me I had an object in front of it. If your eye's straight from the road, so if you're looking at either one of your screens or out a window or even at a junction like this one, trying to make sure cars aren't coming towards you for too long, it will bing and bong at you, and that is annoying as well. But overall, I feel like it just needs to be toned down slightly. The way that turbo kicks in is quite aggressive, and if you're going around a corner, it can cause you to lose traction at really not much of a speed at all, and it just feels a bit aggressive and a bit unrefined. You probably heard the wheels chirping again then as I was trying to set off quite casually. So, does the T9 change the ute game in Australia? No, not really, but I have found this one pretty easy to live with, very well equipped, and I'm a fan of the price. JAC calls the T9 the safest ute in Australia, a title it copped from ANCAP last year. There's 7 airbags, including a centre bag, and all the active safety systems like AEB, lane keep assist. Though, as we've discussed, some of them are mind-bendingly annoying. JAC offers a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty with 24/7 roadside assist and the promise of a like-for-like loan vehicle if yours is off the road for a warranty repair. Servicing is required every 12 months or 15,000 Ks, and the cap price servicing program averages out to about $438 per year for the first 7 years. Is the JAC the roughest, toughest ute I've ever driven? No, it's not. And nor does it scale new heights in terms of cabin tech or fit out either. But it has been extremely easy to live with, and it's incredibly good value. Plus, I really like the brand's positioning. Not everybody needs to go to the furthest extreme of what a ute can do. There are a lot of people in the middle ground, and a vehicle like this is designed to play in that space. Now, one important caveat, we haven't put it through the test on any of the really hard stuff yet. No towing or off-roading. So for that, you're gonna have to wait and see. But purely as a lifestyle vehicle, I found it really easy to live with. Now remember, to check out my full review on this ute, head to carsguide.com.au, and while you're there, you'll find thousands of other reviews written by some of the best motoring journalists in the country.